24 Hours Inside San Quentin. The most feared prison in California. This documentary reconstructs a single, harrowing day inside San Quentin State Prison, California's oldest and most infamous penitentiary. Drawing from public records, court filings, news reports, and verified investigative journalism, it explores the prison's violent history, death row legacy, overcrowding, inmate hierarchies, and the psychological toll of life behind its walls, through the lens of one composite inmate's first 24 hours. They call it the end of the line. A fortress of concrete and razor wire where 700 condemned men once waited to die, and where thousands more learned, in a single moment, that freedom is only a memory. From the outside, it looks almost peaceful. Sunlight glinting off the bay. Seagulls circling above rusted gun towers. But inside, every hour is borrowed time. Every step can be your last. This is San Quentin. And this is what the first 24 hours really feel like. The gate that never opens. The bus slows before anyone sees the prison. That's the first thing you're taught. San Quentin announces itself before you ever lay eyes on it. The road tightens, the air changes, and the sound of the outside world begins to drain away like water circling a steel drain. Then, around a blind curve hugging the edge of San Pablo Bay, it appears. A flat, low sprawl of tan concrete and gunmetal fencing perched directly on the water. No long, cinematic approach. No dramatic entrance. Just a sudden realization that there is nowhere left to go. San Quentin State Prison opened in 1852, making it the oldest prison in California. Built during the Gold Rush, when law moved faster than courts and justice arrived tied to a rope, the prison has since housed more than 175,000 inmates, according to state corrections records. For more than a century, it was California's primary execution site, first by hanging, later by lethal gas, and eventually by lethal injection. Inside those walls, more than 700 men were placed on death row at its peak. Some waited decades. Some died before their sentence could be carried out. The last execution in California took place at San Quentin in 2006, according to official state records. And in 2019, Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive moratorium on the death penalty, emptying the execution chamber for the first time in nearly a century. But none of that history is visible from the back of a prison bus. Inside the bus, it smells like diesel, sweat, and fear that no one will admit to feeling. Hands cuffed in front. Ankles chained. Metal biting into bone with every bump in the road. The men sit in silence because silence is safer than saying the wrong thing to the wrong person on your first day. Among them is a man identified in state intake records only as a number, but for the purposes of this story, he'll be called Miguel R., a composite identity based on multiple verified inmate intake accounts. The crimes vary. The fear does not. Miguel is 29 years old. First felony sentence over 5 years. Transferred from a county facility that felt brutal, until he learned what brutal really means. As the bus turns toward the main gate, the guard's voice finally cuts through the quiet. Welcome to Quentin. No one laughs. The outer gate unlocks with a hydraulic groan. Steel teeth pulling back. The bus rolls forward into a concrete tunnel that swallows daylight in a single second. The outer gate slams shut behind them, sealing off the free world. The sally port. Every prison has one. A double gate system designed so that only one side can ever be open at a time. It's the physical point of no return. Once you're inside, there's no sprinting back. No sudden change of heart. No last look at the sky. According to California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation intake procedures, every transfer into San Quentin begins the same way: search, strip, scan, inventory. But procedure doesn't prepare you for how it feels to be erased. Inside the receiving building, Miguel's chains are removed just long enough for new hands to take his place. There are no names here. Only numbers and charges. Correctional officers line the walls, some with batons, some with pepper spray, all with that neutral, practiced stare that can read panic from across a room. No one is yelling. They don't have to. Their silence does the work. Miguel is ordered to strip. Everyone is. Clothes into a plastic tub. Shoes. Underwear last. Tattoos examined like criminal receipts. Every scar questioned. Every mark catalogued. A digital camera flashes as a clerk documents his body from multiple angles. This is not about dignity. It's about control. State intake policy requires a full body inspection for contraband at every transfer. Drugs, weapons, notes, razor blades, all of it has come through here before. Some of it will again. Then comes the shower. Ice-cold water blasting over raw skin while guards watch through thick glass. No towels until you're clean by their standard. The concrete floor is slick with diluted disinfectant that burns the lungs. Miguel scrubs harder than he ever has in his life, not because he thinks it matters, but because everyone else is. When he's finally handed prison-issued clothing, khaki pants, denim shirt, thin cotton boxers, he feels smaller somehow. Like the person he was before has already peeled away. In a holding cell the size of a walk-in closet, 7 men are packed shoulder to shoulder. Another composite inmate, known here as T-Bone, whispers from the corner. "First time in Quentin." Miguel nods. T-Bone exhales slowly. "Stay quiet. Watch your hands. Don't promise nothing." Those are the only 3 rules he offers. From intake, Miguel is moved through a gauntlet of stations: medical screening, fingerprinting, classification review. His sentence length and charge determine everything from housing to work eligibility. San Quentin is not a normal prison. It's a destination. Historically, it served as the state's primary death row facility for men. While some row inmates have since been relocated due to overcrowding and reclassification efforts, the prison's architecture was built around that function: narrow tiers, coffin-sized cells, and isolation blocks designed for long-term containment. Even for general population inmates, the shadow of death row still defines the culture. This is where the worst of the worst were once sent. Rapists. Mass murderers. Serial killers. Public records confirm that notorious figures passed through San Quentin at different points in history, men whose crimes shaped national headlines. Their presence left behind a mythology that newer inmates inherit whether they want it or not. Every hallway has a story. Every cell houses echoes. Miguel finally reaches classification, a windowless room where a 3-person panel decides where he'll live. There's no debate. No negotiation. Because of prior affiliations listed in county jail reports, marked by tattoos that he got years before he understood their consequences, Miguel is assigned to a high-security general population block. Not death row. Not yet. A guard escorts him through corridors that seem to loop back into themselves. The prison is a century-old maze layered with modern security. Steel bars give way to electronic doors, which open only when 2 separate officers turn keys on opposite ends of the hall. Overhead, gun rails run along catwalks where armed towers stand watch. San Quentin is one of the few prisons in California still designed around that old-school, fortress model: rifles above, bodies below. The cell block door yawns open. Sound hits first. Shouting. Laughter. Metallic clanging. The weird, constant hum of too many people trapped in too little space. Then the smell. Heat. Sweat. Cleaning chemicals. Old concrete soaked with decades of human presence. This is North Block, one of the oldest housing units in the prison. Built before electricity ran reliably through the yard. Retrofitted, reinforced, but never truly modernized. Cells are stacked 4 tiers high. Each is barely wider than a closet. Each built to hold 1 man. Most now hold 2. Miguel's cellmate is already inside. He's older. Mid-40s. Stocky. Gray creeping into his hair. Sleeves of ink run down both arms. They eye each other without smiling. Trust is a currency. Nobody is rich in here. "I'm Darius," the man says, offering his name like a test. Miguel. That's all they exchange. A guard unlocks the cell. Miguel steps inside. The door slams shut behind him with a final, echoing clang that vibrates through his ribs. For a moment, neither man speaks. The cell measures roughly 8 by 10 feet. 2 metal bunks welded to the wall. A toilet sink combo crouched in the corner. No privacy. No quiet. No darkness that really counts. From the tier outside, voices rise and fall in layers. Racial groups cluster automatically. That grouping isn't written into policy, but every inmate knows it is written into survival. News reports and court filings from inmate lawsuits have long documented how racial alignment often dictates where prisoners can sit, eat, walk, and sometimes even breathe safely. Darius speaks again, low. Rules are simple. You don't touch my stuff. I don't touch yours. You got people. Miguel shakes his head. Then you keep your head down until someone tells you who you are. That's not a threat. That's instruction. The first meal arrives less than an hour later. A slot opens at the bottom of each cell. Trays slide through. Cold vegetables. A scoop of beans. Bread that tastes slightly sweet and slightly sour at the same time. Miguel eats because hunger overrules fear. Darius eats because he always has. Out on the tier, a new arrival doesn't get ignored. Eyes track Miguel's movements when he steps out for the first count. Some curious. Some predatory. Some calculating. In San Quentin, reputation is a shield you either arrive with, or build under pressure. During the afternoon yard rotation, Darius explains the unspoken map. The yard is open concrete with faded court lines and scattered wait stations. Beyond the fence, the bay glitters in the sunlight. Sailboats pass so close they might as well be mocking the men inside. Different groups occupy different zones. Not by official designation. By consequence. Cross the wrong invisible line and you may not make it back to your cell under your own power. Miguel keeps his gaze forward and his mouth shut. He learns quickly that violence here is not loud most of the time. It's quiet. It happens in blind spots. Behind shower curtains. Between stacked bunks during power fluctuations. San Quentin's violent history is not hidden. It's in the public record. In August 1971, an attempted escape attempt by political activist and inmate George Jackson ended in a deadly shootout that left Jackson and 3 correctional officers dead, according to official state investigations. What exactly happened during those moments remains disputed to this day, with conflicting accounts between inmate witnesses and correctional authorities, a reminder that the truth inside prison walls is often fractured by fear and survival. Decades later, stabbings, riots, and assaults still punctuate the prison's timeline in local and national news. Violence never left. It just learned to wait its turn. By evening, Miguel is exhausted in ways he didn't know exhaustion could exist. Sleep becomes difficult when the lights never fully go out. When officers walk the tier every 30 minutes. When shouting flares without warning from somewhere down the block. He lies on his bunk, staring at the underside of the metal frame above him. Darius speaks softly into the dark. Whatever you were out there, don't be that in here. Miguel understands what he means. Out there, you can walk away. In here, there is nowhere to go. Sometime after midnight, an alarm blares. Not loud enough to signal a riot. Loud enough to jolt every nerve awake. Guards rush past the tier. Shouting echoes from another housing unit. The lockdown siren follows seconds later. Cells slam shut in unison. Darius sits upright. Don't move, he whispers. Later, Miguel will learn from scattered whispers that an assault took place in a shower stall 2 blocks away. No names. No outcomes. Just an understanding that someone's first night probably ended in a hospital bed, or worse. Official incident logs rarely tell full stories. They record times, injuries, disciplinary actions. They do not record the part where adrenaline replaces sleep for an entire cell block. By the time the all-clear sounds, the night feels thinner. Like something tore through it and didn't bother to patch the hole. Miguel never fully sleeps. Just before dawn, distant gulls cry outside the walls. It's the first sound from the free world he's heard since the sally port closed behind him. And for just a second, against his will, he imagines what it must feel like to stand on the water side of the fence again. Then the morning count begins. And his first full day inside San Quentin truly starts. End of Chapter 1. If you'd like, I'll continue with Chapter 2, where the real power structures of San Quentin come into focus, and Miguel learns how quickly a single mistake can turn deadly. You said. Start Chapter 2, minimum 2500 plus start right away. ChatGPT said. Chapter 2, the yard has its own law. Morning count at San Quentin is not a wake-up call. It's a confirmation of survival. The tier lights snap brighter just before 6 a.m., washing the concrete in a pale, institutional glare. Boots move in synchronized rhythm as officers walk the line, stopping at every cell, flashlight beams slicing through the bars. Faces turn from bunks like figures rising from underwater. Miguel sits up as the beam hits him. Cell 214. 2, Darius answers calmly. The officer marks the clipboard and moves on. 2 alive. That's the first victory of the day. Breakfast follows 10 minutes later. Trays slide through the slots. Powdered eggs. Oatmeal. Another piece of that strange, half-sweet bread. Miguel eats slower now, aware that even chewing is something people watch here. Nothing goes unnoticed. Darius finishes first and leans back against the wall. Today you learn the yard, he says. The word carries weight. The yard is not just where you exercise. It's where alliances are tested, debts are created, and mistakes turn permanent. News investigations into California prison culture have long documented how racial and gang-based groupings dominate the social order, often operating parallel to official authority. It's not policy, but it is reality. When the cell door finally slides open, the tier moves almost as one. Groups form instantly, as if pulled by invisible magnets. Miguel stays half a step behind Darius, matching his pace without crowding him. They descend iron stairs into the echoing belly of the block and out into the yard. Sunlight hits hard. For a moment, the contrast is disorienting. Blue sky. Open space. The bay shimmering just beyond the fence. From a distance, it could almost be a park. From up close, it's a chessboard. Men occupy specific areas, benches, walls, stretches of track. Each section has a different color of skin, a different set of tattoos, a different posture. Some are laughing loudly. Some barely move at all. Everyone is watching. Darius slows as they reach a cluster of men near the weight pile. Miguel feels it before it's said. This is where he belongs for now. One of the men steps forward. Tall. Angular face. Tattooed face markings that appear hand-done. His eyes don't blink much. You knew Selly, he says to Darius, not a question. Yeah, Darius replies. The man looks Miguel up and down, cataloging him the way Intake did. What you in for? He asks Miguel. Darius answers before Miguel can. He's learning. The man studies Darius for a second, then nods. That's wise. There's no handshake. No welcome. Just acknowledgement. The yard hums with low noise, conversation stacked on top of each other, metal clanging from makeshift weights, the hiss of wind through chain-link fence. Overhead, armed guards stand on raised platforms with rifles carried at rest. They don't scan constantly. They scan selectively. Miguel stands where Darius positions him. You don't wander, Darius murmurs. You don't stare. You don't sit unless someone says it's okay. Minutes stretch. A man jogging on the track trips suddenly near the far wall. He goes down hard. 2 others close in instantly. From where Miguel stands, he can't clearly see what happens, only a tight knot of bodies and then rapid movement. A whistle shrieks. Officers surge from the yard gates. By the time the crowd parts, one man is on the ground clutching his leg. Blood darkens the concrete beneath him. News reports would later describe incidents like this as inmate-on-inmate assault with a sharpened instrument. They rarely describe the speed. Or the way everyone else instinctively pretends to see nothing. Miguel doesn't move. Darius doesn't react. That's a warning shot, someone mutters behind them. No one elaborates. The injured man is carried out on a stretcher within minutes. The yard resumes as if nothing happened. Conversations pick back up. Weights continue to rise and fall. Miguel feels sick, not from the sight of blood, but from how easily it's absorbed into the background. Hours later, as the yard winds down, a thin man with wary eyes drifts close to Darius. Word is your new one might need an introduction, he says quietly. Darius keeps his gaze on the fence. Not today. The man shrugs and moves on. Miguel doesn't ask what the introduction would have been. He doesn't need to. Back in the block, the mood on the tier feels tighter. A ripple of awareness travels from cell to cell. Something is shifting. No one announces it. Change here never arrives with a memo. During afternoon rec time, an officer pauses outside Miguel's cell. Pack up, he says. You're moving. Miguel's stomach drops. Darius doesn't look surprised. Where? Miguel asks. The officer doesn't answer. Transfers within San Quentin can happen for dozens of reasons: security concerns, classification changes, informant tips, or simply bed space. According to court filings in multiple inmate lawsuits, internal moves are one of the most common triggers for violence, because they can push someone into a hostile unit without warning. Miguel is escorted down a different corridor this time. Fewer voices. Different smells. The concrete here is cleaner, newer. The cell he's led into is empty. For now. An officer slides the door open. Miguel steps inside. The slot clangs shut. He is alone. The silence presses in immediately. For the first time since arriving, there is no human presence within arm's length. No breathing in the bunk above. No muttered warnings in the dark. Just distance. And distance here is not safety. It's exposure. Miguel sits on the lower bunk and waits. Hours pass slowly. Dinner comes and goes through the slot without a word. The tier remains quieter than North Block. When voices rise, they drop just as quickly. At some point after evening count, footsteps stop at his cell. The door opens. 2 men step inside. An officer stands just outside, arms folded, neutral face. This won't take long, one of the men says. He's well-built, with prison-perfect posture and clean line-work tattoos that suggest time and money behind them. The other is thinner, eyes sharp with constant evaluation. They don't threaten Miguel. They don't need to. You're not in trouble, the bigger one says. This is just orientation. The word sounds false in the small space. They ask him the same questions again: where he's from, what he's in for, who he knows on the outside. Miguel answers minimally, choosing every word like it might cut him. The thin one studies him closely. You got any debts? He asks. Miguel shakes his head. Good, the bigger one says. Then don't make any. They explain the basics without spelling out consequences. Which commissary items can be borrowed? Which cannot? Who collects? Who enforces? Where you sit during meals? When you speak? When you don't? The laws of this world are simple. Breaking them is not. After a few minutes, they step back. You'll be fine, the bigger one says casually. As long as you don't surprise anyone. They leave. The cell door shuts. Miguel exhales shakily. Later that night, a new cellmate arrives. His name is Isaac. Early 20s. Nervous energy. Fresh ink that hasn't fully healed. He tries to smile. First time, he asks Miguel. Miguel nods. Me too. They don't sleep much. Around 2:30 a.m., shouting erupts somewhere down the tier. A crash. A brief, sharp cry that ends too quickly. The lights remain on. No sirens this time. In the morning, there is one less tray sliding through a slot several cells down. No announcement is made. On the 3rd day inside San Quentin, still within what Miguel thinks of as his first day, because the concept of time is already warping, he is returned to North Block. Darius is there waiting. You're alive, Darius observes. Barely. Darius nods. Then you're doing it right. The routine begins to press itself into Miguel's nervous system. Count. Chow. Yard. Lockdown. Rec, repeat. Each activity is layered with threat and negotiation. Each movement is measured. During an afternoon yard session, Miguel notices something different. The men who first surveyed him by the weight pile, the angular one with the face tattoos, walks directly toward him. Darius tenses. Miguel feels his pulse climb into his throat. The man stops an arm's length away. You're the new one from 214, he says. Miguel nods cautiously. Yeah. He studies Miguel's face. You got hands? Miguel doesn't immediately answer. The man tilts his head. It's not a trick question. Before Miguel can respond, shouting breaks out near the track again. Two men collide violently. Others scatter. Officers surge. Whistles cut through the air. The man with the face tattoo steps back slowly. We'll talk again, he says. Miguel's legs tremble long after the yard is cleared. Later, in the relative shadow near the cells, Darius explains. That was a test. They don't care if you win. They care if you stand. Miguel understands then that every moment here is a kind of audition. News reports often describe gangs as the primary driver of prison violence, but inmate accounts documented in federal court filings paint a more granular picture. Survival depends not just on affiliation, but on the perception of usefulness, resolve, and compliance. You don't have to be dangerous. You just have to be expensive to hurt. That night, in the darkness of their cell, Darius speaks quietly. They're expecting you to choose. Choose what? Miguel asks. Who you are, Darius replies. The next incident finds Miguel before he realizes he's being tested. It happens in the shower room 3 days later. Steam clouds the narrow space. The floor is slick with soap and water. Visibility is poor by design. Guards stand at the entrance, not inside. Miguel is rinsing when a body brushes too close behind him. Then again. He shifts instinctively. A voice murmurs close to his ear. You move fast. Miguel turns too quickly. The man in front of him grins. It's the thin one from the cell orientation. Everything after that compresses. A shove. A slip. Miguel's back collides with tile. The man's smile vanishes. Hands grab Miguel's shirt. For a split second, choice exists. Run. Freeze. Strike. Miguel strikes. It's not clean. It's not skilled. It's panic given direction. A forearm to the chest. A clawing grab at the thinner man's shoulder. Someone shouts. Bodies rush in. Steam swallows the scene. Whistles explode from the doorway as officers charge in. When it's over, Miguel is face down on the wet concrete with plastic cuffs biting into his wrists. The thin man is on his knee several feet away, blood leaking from his nose. Neither one speaks. Both are escorted out separately. Disciplinary reports will later record the incident as mutual combat. That phrase appears in countless San Quentin conduct logs obtained by journalists over the years. It suggests equality. It rarely reflects reality. Miguel spends 72 hours in administrative segregation. The cell is smaller. The light never changes. Meals come irregularly. Human contact is almost non-existent. Isolation has a sound, your own breathing echoing too loudly in your skull. On the third night, he hears Darius's voice echo faintly from somewhere down the tier during movement. Good, Darius calls. Miguel closes his eyes. When he is released back into general population, the atmosphere has shifted. The man with the face tattoos meets his eyes and nods once. The thin man avoids him completely. No one congratulates Miguel. They simply move as though a question has been answered. That is the moment Miguel begins to understand the most dangerous illusion about prison violence. It's not impulsive. It's administrative. Weeks pass. Miguel accrues small routines. Wiping down tables. Walking laps with Darius. Learning who controls which doors during which hours. Who trades coffee. Who trades protection. Through scattered conversations, he learns fragments of San Quentin's deeper history. How entire tiers once went dark during riots in the 1980s and 1990s. How outbreaks of violence surged after court-ordered population reductions shifted inmate demographics. How the death row tiers once echoed with chants during executions, heard faintly even in general population on certain nights, an unconfirmed detail that appears in inmate memoirs and second-hand accounts but has never been officially verified. He learns that ghosts exist here, whether you believe in them or not. On a gray afternoon near the yard fence, Miguel watches barges slide across the bay and asks the question that's been building for days. What about death row? Darius's jaw tightens. What about it? Is it still like it used to be? Darius exhales slowly. You don't go looking for that part of the prison. But is it bad? Miguel presses. Darius glances toward the tall, silent housing block visible beyond the fence. Worse than you think. And quieter than you expect. According to state corrections data, even after the moratorium on executions, hundreds of men remained formerly classified as death row prisoners at San Quentin for years, living under modified conditions that still reflected extreme isolation. Some were later relocated as part of legal challenges arguing that prolonged death row confinement constituted cruel and unusual punishment. But the architecture never forgot what it was built for. Some nights, Darius adds, you can still feel it. One evening during lockdown, the power flickers. Just once. But in a place that runs on total visibility, even a moment of darkness sends a message. From somewhere deep in the block, a voice begins to chant. Then another. The words are indistinct. The sound is not. It rises, spreads, then falls silent again as quickly as it began. No official report ever mentions it. Miguel dreams of the Sally Port that night. The gate opening. The gate closing. The sound of steel sealing the world away. And he understands, finally, that San Quentin is not a place you are sent. It's a place you are absorbed. By the end of what he still thinks of as his first stretch of time. Those early days that blur into one long initiation, Miguel is not safer. But he is sturdier. His hands don't shake as much. His eyes don't search every face. His steps fall into rhythm with the block. That's what San Quentin really takes from you first. Not hope. Not freedom. But hesitation. And as the prison settles into its night cycle once more, with the bay winds rattling the fences and the guards pacing their elevated rails, Miguel becomes aware of a deeper truth, one that won't fully reveal itself until far too late. The yard has a law. But inside the prison, there are laws beneath that one. And breaking those is not punished with discipline. It's punished with disappearance. The night the prison blinked. The first sign that something is wrong does not come as a scream. It comes as silence. On the tier, silence is never neutral. It means either everyone is asleep, or everyone is waiting. Miguel senses it during the late afternoon count. The usual background noise has thinned. The men on the upper tiers aren't calling down to each other. The routine arguments between neighboring cells don't ignite. Even the weight pile on the yard had been quiet earlier, as if the prison itself were holding its breath. He mentions it to Darius during dinner. You feel that? Miguel asks. Darius doesn't look up from his tray. Everybody does. Why? Darius hesitates, then shrugs. Because tonight's one of those nights. That's all he says. Miguel learns that San Quentin has two kinds of nights. The first are ordinary. Loud, restless, dangerous in small, predictable increments. The second are planned. They don't show up on any official calendar. They're not announced by horns or whistles. They're forecast only by posture and movement, by who suddenly doesn't go to the yard, by which cell doors stay closed when they usually open. By evening, Miguel notices at least a dozen men across the block who haven't left their cells all day. Some are veterans. Some are very young. None of them are random. During the final rec period before lockdown, the man with the face tattoos finally approaches Miguel again. This time he doesn't stop at arm's length. This time he steps in close. You got hands, he says softly. Tonight you show if you got discipline. Miguel looks past him at Darius. Darius's face tightens, but he gives the smallest nod. I don't know what you mean, Miguel says carefully. The man smiles thinly. You will. He walks away without another word. Lockdown comes at 8:42 p.m. The Sally Ports seal. The tiers dim to permanent night lighting. The usual post-lockdown noise, men settling in, radios flicking on, arguments flaring up the rail, doesn't arrive. Instead, there's a murmur. A low, collective undercurrent of whispered movement. Miguel sits on his bunk, fully clothed. Darius paces once, then stops. They didn't tell you? Miguel asks. They told you, Darius replies. Miguel's skin prickles. At 9:17 p.m., the power flickers. Just for half a second. Enough. Enough for shadows to rearrange themselves. Enough for the men who've been waiting to move. The first impact sounds like someone dropping a locker down the tier. A deep, metallic crash. Then another. Then shouting. The alarm doesn't sound immediately. That's the worst part. For nearly 30 seconds, the prison hesitates. In that hesitation, the night breaks open. From somewhere 2 tiers below, a raw, choking sound tears through the darkness. The sound of a man trying to breathe through blood. Miguel is on his feet before he realizes he's moved. Darius grabs the back of his shirt and yanks him down hard. You stay, Darius hisses. Whatever you hear. You stay. But the sound is multiplying now. Metal on metal. Bodies colliding. The unmistakable wet thud of flesh meeting concrete. The alarm finally screams to life. Red strobes slice across the cell block. Doors remain locked. That is another rule of nights like this, nobody opens until control is already lost. Miguel forces himself to breathe slowly as chaos ricochets down the tier. Through the bars, he sees sprinting shadows. A man collapses near the stairwell, clutching his side. Others step over him without stopping. Figures dart into blind spots between camera coverage. The officers' voices burst from loudspeakers, overlapping and frantic. All units respond. North Block emergency. Repeat, North Block emergency. A gunshot cracks somewhere above. Not into a person. Into the ceiling. A warning. The prison shudders. From somewhere down the tier, a voice shouts Miguel's name. Once. Twice. Darius stiffens. That's bait, he says immediately. They want you out. Miguel's pulse slams in his ears. Another voice screams for help. Real this time. Unmistakably real. Miguel steps forward. Darius wraps an arm around his chest and drags him back violently as something slices through the air just beyond the bars with a hiss and a dull clang against steel. A weapon. Thrown blindly. Miguel's knees buckle as the reality hits. If he had taken one more step, it would have found him. Minutes stretch. Then the doors open. Not all at once. One section at a time. Officers flood in wearing helmets and riot shields. The tier is a blinding mosaic of red lights, rushing boots, screaming orders. Miguel is yanked from his cell and shoved face first against the wall, wrists bound behind him. He tries to look for Darius. He can't see him. Medical teams push stretchers down the tier. One carries the men who fell by the stairwell. There's too much blood for him to be conscious. Another stretcher follows behind it. Then another. By the time Miguel is finally released back into his cell hours later, the tier smells like iron and antiseptic. 3 cells stand open and empty. 2 men are confirmed hospitalized, according to later incident summaries released through public information requests. One is listed only as inmate deceased. No name. No explanation. Just a number that will never answer roll call again. The next morning is not discussed. That is the unspoken order. No one asks who moved first. No one asks who planned it. And no one, under any circumstances, asks who called Miguel's name in the dark. The prison does not erase memories. It buries them under consequences. Later that week, Miguel is summoned to a small interview room just off the administration wing. There is no explanation. There never is. Inside, 2 men wait at a metal table. One is a correctional lieutenant Miguel recognizes. The other is not in uniform. Dark suit. No visible badge. A face built for neutrality. This is Investigator Hale, the lieutenant says. Miguel sits. No cuffs this time. That tells him everything. Do you know why you're here? Hale asks. Miguel shakes his head. You were present during last week's incident, Hale says. So were hundreds of men, Miguel thinks. We're trying to establish a timeline, Hale continues. Movements. Interactions. Patterns. Miguel stays silent. Hale tilts his head slightly. You were involved in a prior altercation in the shower 3 days earlier, correct? Miguel hesitates. We both were. Correct, Hale agrees calmly. Mutual combat. The phrase again. According to public records and investigative reporting, following major prison disturbances, law enforcement agencies often conduct parallel criminal investigations separate from internal disciplinary processes. These investigations can take months and often result in no public charges due to lack of cooperative witnesses. You were approached by multiple inmates in the days leading up to the disturbance, Hale continues. We have surveillance confirming at least 2 of those interactions. Miguel swallows. We're not accusing you of anything, Hale says. Yet. The word lands heavily. Did anyone instruct you to participate in violence on the night in question? Hale asks. Miguel thinks of the men with the face tattoos. The phrase, you got discipline. He shakes his head. No. Hale studies him. Did anyone attempt to lure you out of your cell? Miguel's heart thumps. He hesitates, just long enough for the silence to grow teeth. He thinks of Darius pulling him back. No, he says. The interview ends 10 minutes later with nothing signed and nothing resolved. As Miguel is escorted out, Hale speaks once more. You can't stay in the middle forever. Miguel does not reply. For the next 2 weeks, San Quentin tightens. Yard schedules stagger unpredictably. Canteen is delayed without explanation. Tier rotations shuffle men who have learned not to be shuffled. The prison is rearranging itself internally. Investigations do not feel like justice here. They feel like weather. Darius grows quieter. You ever think about what happens if they don't find who they're looking for? Miguel asks one night. They already did, Darius replies. Who? Darius meets his eyes. Not always a who. Sometimes it's a balance. Miguel doesn't understand what that means until the next transfer wave hits. 6 men vanish from North Block in one morning. Not to medical. Not to court. To administrative segregation. Then to other prisons. Out of sight. The men with the face tattoos remains. That alone tells Miguel more than any official report ever could. But the investigation does not stop with the disturbance. It widens. 2 weeks later, another inmate dies. This time it's not during a riot. It's a quiet stabbing in a shower stall in the early morning hours. No camera coverage. No witnesses. Same reporting language appears in internal summaries obtained later by journalists, sharp object. Inmate unresponsive. Deceased upon arrival at outside medical facility. No motive listed. No suspects named. The prison says the incidents are not believed to be connected. According to multiple journalistic investigations into California prisons over the past 3 decades, that phrase appears frequently after internal violence, often even when connections seem obvious to those inside. Miguel feels the weight of it pressing closer. The men with the face tattoos approaches him again one afternoon near the fence line. You passed, he says. Passed what? Miguel asks. A test you didn't know you were taking. Miguel's voice stays steady. What does that get me? The man smiles. Time. And what does failing get me? The man's smile fades. A name in a file that never closes. That night, Miguel realizes the investigation isn't about the riot anymore. It's about structure. About who moves whom. Who gives which signals. Who speaks without speaking. San Quentin has always been a laboratory for violence management. Court filings challenging prison conditions going back decades describe elaborate systems of informants, silent enforcers, and negotiated truces between rival groups, all under the surface of official custody. The prison never really loses control. It just redistributes it. Miguel feels the redistribution shift again during a late evening movement when he sees Darius escorted out in cuffs. Administration segregation. No explanation. No goodbye. Miguel does not see him again for weeks. Without Darius, Miguel's position is exposed. He becomes visible. Visibility is the most dangerous currency in the block. 2 days later, Investigator Hale returns. This time, his tone is colder. "You understand why your neighbor was moved," Hale says. "No," Miguel answers honestly. Hale leans forward. "Because proximity is liability. You don't have to do anything wrong to be connected to the wrong thing." Miguel realizes then that the investigation is not about discovery. It's about deterrence. "You're still in the middle," Hale adds. "That won't last." "What do you want me to do?" Miguel snaps before he can stop himself. Hale studies him for a long moment. "Survive honestly," he says. "Or survive knowingly. Both have consequences. Only one lets you sleep." Miguel leaves the room shaking. That night, another incident erupts, smaller this time. A slash across a cheek during chow. Quick. Surgical. No lockdown. The message doesn't need to be loud anymore. It's targeted now. Miguel begins to understand the scale of what he's inside. This is not chaos. This is negotiation by injury. Days later, a rumor circulates through the tier, quiet, persistent. The man with the face tattoos has been greenlit. Unconfirmed. Unverifiable. But the energy shifts immediately. Men stop standing near him. Eyes that once followed him drop away. Even power recognizes incoming absence. That night, Miguel dreams of the fence opening onto the bay. Not escape. Just the water swallowing the prison, block by block, until only the gun towers remain. He wakes to screaming. Real screaming. Not down the tier. From the cell next to his. His current cellmate, Isaac, slams against the bars in blind panic. "Help! Help!" He's bleeding. Miguel pivots just in time to see Isaac dragged backward by a shadow inside the cell. Then silence. Then a wet, choking gurgle. Miguel pounds the bars. Officers sprint in within seconds, this time faster than ever before. The door next to his bursts open. Riot shields surge inside. Isaac is carried out unconscious, throat cut shallow but wide, blood soaked into his shirt and pooling onto the walkway. The man with the face tattoos is nowhere to be seen. The prison locks down completely. Full emergency status. Every inmate in North Block is cuffed, searched, and extracted cell by cell through the night. By dawn, the man with the face tattoos is found 2 blocks away, lifeless in a secondary stairwell. The official statement issued later simply reads, "Inmate found unresponsive. Cause of death under investigation." Unconfirmed reports circulate immediately. Some say he was stabbed. Some say he was strangled. Some say he was allowed to die. No report ever publicly clarifies the weapon, the sequence, or the responsible party. The investigation fades within weeks. No charges. No courtroom. No ending. Isaac survives, barely. His voice is never the same. Darius returns 3 weeks later from administrative segregation with new scars and new silence. Neither man speaks about what happened. They don't have to. The prison has declared closure. Miguel now understands the layered truth. The riot was not the crisis. It was the signal. The real conflict unfolded quietly afterward, one knife, one stairwell, one erased figure at a time. By the end of the month, the yard regains its volume. Benches refill. Weights clang again. Laughter reappears at the edges. The prison has metabolized the violence. But Miguel has changed. He doesn't feel stronger. He feels patterned. Like he now fits too well into a system he never agreed to join. One night, while staring through the bars at the faint shimmer of the bay, Miguel finally speaks the question he's been carrying since the Sally Port swallowed him. "Does it ever stop?" he asks Darius. Darius exhales slowly. "No," he says. "It just changes hands." And for the first time since arriving at San Quentin, Miguel realizes the most dangerous misconception of all. The prison doesn't devour people. People are used as leverage. And he is no longer invisible. The cost of surviving the first day. San Quentin does not announce its endings. It only signals that something has shifted. The morning after the man with the face tattoos is found dead in the stairwell, the prison does not erupt. There are no riots. No mass protests. No visible grief. The silence that settles is heavier than noise would have been. Miguel wakes before count. The lights haven't changed. The wind off the bay rattles the fence the same way it always does. Gulls still cry outside the walls like nothing on the inside has consequences beyond steel. But the block feels hollowed. Darius sits on his bunk, fully dressed. He hasn't slept either. All this over one night, Miguel says quietly. Darius doesn't look at him. No. All this over years. Last night just cashed the check. During count, when the officer reaches the empty cell 2 doors down, the pause is barely a second long. The clipboard marks the absence. The line moves on. After breakfast, Miguel notices new men on the tier, faces he's never seen, bodies placed with quiet intention. Transfers always follow violence. The prison refills gaps the way a body forms scar tissue. He watches one of the new arrivals struggle with his tray, hands shaking too much to keep the oatmeal from sloshing over the edges. It's a mirror of himself from weeks ago. He wonders if anyone sees him the same way now. That afternoon, Investigator Hale returns again. This time he brings paperwork. The case is officially closed, Hale says once Miguel sits. Miguel almost laughs. Which one? Hale doesn't answer. According to public records and historical reporting, most homicide investigations inside California prisons never result in criminal prosecutions unless overwhelming evidence or outside pressure exists. Witnesses recant. Physical evidence disappears. Jurisdictional gray zones swallow timelines. What about the riot? Miguel asks. Classified as a disturbance with multiple unknown assailants, Hale replies smoothly. And the stairwell? Unresolved. Miguel feels something inside him not tight. Then why am I still here? Hale finally looks at him directly. Because you're still alive. Miguel stares at him. That's not a joke, Hale adds. In here, survival creates its own questions. People ask why you're still standing when others aren't. I'm here to tell you some of those questions are dangerous. He slides a form across the table. Protective relocation, he says. Different prison. New block. New neighborhood. PC. Miguel asks. Hale nods. Protective custody is not safety in San Quentin vocabulary. It's isolation with intent. PC inmates eat alone. Walk alone. Live behind layers of separation that mark them permanently. In many prisons, being labeled PC makes a man a target for the rest of his sentence. And if I don't sign? Miguel asks. Hale leans back. Then you stay where you are. With visibility. Miguel stares at the paper. If he signs, he becomes a ghost with a label. If he doesn't, he becomes a known variable. Darius waits outside when Miguel is escorted back to the tier. What did they want? Darius asks quietly. They want me to disappear, Miguel replies. Darius studies him. You thinking about it? Miguel hesitates. That answer decides everything, Darius warns. Miguel looks down at his hands. He remembers the thrown weapon that nearly split his skull. He remembers Isaac's blood soaking across the concrete. He remembers the men with the face tattoos vanishing into a stairwell and never coming out. And he realizes something else. No choice here leads to safety. Only to different styles of risk. That night, Miguel signs nothing. For now. The prison returns to routine because routine is how institutionally managed trauma is disguised as normalcy. Yard opens again. Muscle memory replaces fear for most men. For Miguel, each repetition feels heavier. He notices small shifts in the block's power geometry. New connectors appear. Old enforcers recede. The prison's internal ecosystem rebalances itself with unnerving efficiency. Darius explains none of it explicitly. You don't narrate storms, he says. You read the wind. Miguel tries. Weeks fold into the strange compression of prison time where days feel eternal and months feel like skipped pages. His first real job assignment arrives. Kitchen duty. It's considered medium risk, medium status. Access to food is access to currency. According to multiple investigative reports into California prison economies, food workers sit at a dangerous crossroads between utility and exploitation. Miguel packets bread. Wipes counters. Learns how many pieces of fruit disappear from inventory each tray cycle. He sees how hunger becomes leverage. One afternoon near the steam tables, a man he barely recognizes leans in. "You passed your first audit," the man murmurs. Miguel blinks. "I didn't know I was being audited." The man smiles faintly. "You always are." In San Quentin, the surface routine is a mask. Every movement you make is logged twice, once on state paper, once in human memory. That evening, Miguel receives his first letter from outside since arriving. The envelope is thin. It smells like laundry detergent and sun. It's from his sister. She writes about small things. Their mother's arthritis. A broken water heater. A neighbor getting a new dog. Ordinary life carrying on at a distance that feels unmeasurable. At the bottom, she writes, "You still feel like my brother when I think of you." Miguel folds the letter carefully and stores it inside a worn Bible someone left in the cell years ago. He doesn't read it again for weeks. The next major shake comes without warning. A statewide transfer order. Dozens of inmates from San Quentin shifted out in a single coordinated movement as part of population reclassification. These transfers appear periodically in public correctional data as nondescript logs, movement for facility balancing, but for those inside, they represent profound disruption. Names are called before dawn. Men are gone by breakfast. Darius is on the list. Miguel hears his name called through the haze of sleep. They hug once, quickly, the way men do when permanence makes goodbye loud. "You still got that paper?" Darius asks. Miguel nods. "Keep it," Darius says. "Don't sign it until you have to." Then he's gone. The cell feels impossibly large afterward. Miguel is recelled again within hours. Another young inmate arrives. Another trembling hand on a tray. Another echo of an earlier self. The prison does not mourn. It recycles. Days later, Miguel witnesses something that does not appear in any report. During yard, a man collapses near the fence. Not from violence. From heat. From dehydration. From untreated hypertension and layers of neglected medical paperwork. Miguel, along with several others, shouts for a medic. It takes 7 minutes for staff to reach him. 7 minutes is an eternity in cardiac time. He survives. Barely. Later that night, Miguel learns the men had filed 3 separate medical request forms in the preceding week, all logged and unanswered. This is not brutality in the cinematic sense. It is bureaucratic violence. And it kills just as effectively. Through scattered conversations, Miguel begins to understand the deeper legacy of San Quentin beyond the riots, stabbings, and executions. How overcrowding pressures from the 1980s and 1990s reshaped entire blocks. How court-ordered reforms in the early 2000s forced early releases that destabilized gang hierarchies almost overnight. How the death row moratorium changed the psychology of condemned men without changing the concrete that trapped them. The prison is not frozen in history. It is the slow accumulation of policy decisions made by people who never sleep inside it. Miguel's sense of time begins to fracture. He no longer tracks days by numbers. He tracks them by who disappears. One name at a time. One face erased from memory's lineup. Several months after the riot, Isaac returns to the yard. His voice is damaged. Permanent. He doesn't speak unless necessary. When their eyes meet, there is no recognition. Trauma has edited the past for him. That's another thing San Quentin takes. Not just bodies. Memories. Miguel receives a second summons from Investigator Hale. This time, Hale looks older. The edges of confidence dulled. "You're still eligible for relocation," Hale says. Miguel studies him. "Why do you care?" Hale considers the question. "Because I've done this long enough to see patterns," he replies. "The men who last here aren't always the strongest. They're the ones who learn when to vanish. And the ones who don't." Hale's voice is quiet. They become illustrations. Miguel leaves without signing again. Not yet. One night during late lockdown, the radios fade simultaneously across 3 tiers. Not by accident. A hush follows. From somewhere in East Block, separated but not unreachable by sound, a single voice begins to sing. It's not loud. It's raw. A wordless melody that wavers, cracks, and steadies again. Then another voice joins. Then another. For nearly a full minute, San Quentin becomes something unrecognizable, neither prison nor battlefield, but echo chamber for human sound stripped of language. The song dissolves as suddenly as it began. Later, Miguel will hear that the singer was a former death row inmate who had just lost his final appeal. Unconfirmed. Unverifiable. But the timing is too precise to feel coincidental. This is how grief moves here. Disguised as noise. Miguel's own internal countdown begins without him choosing a date. Not toward release. Toward decision. The protective custody form remains folded inside his Bible. He begins to measure his actions against it. Every question. Every stare. Every silent negotiation. One afternoon, a young runner from kitchen duty corners him near the supply corridor. They're asking about you, the runner whispers. Who's they? Miguel asks. The runner hesitates. People who don't ask twice. The message is clear. Visibility has returned. That night, Miguel dreams of the Sally Port again, but this time, the gate doesn't close. It stays open. No alarm. No guards. Just the road stretching out empty beyond the fence. When he wakes, he knows. The next morning, Miguel signs the paper. The relocation order processes faster than he expects. By evening, his name is on a transfer list bound for a different California facility. Lower security. Different population. Different risks. When the bus rolls into the Sally Port this time, the sound is the same. Hydraulics. Steel. Finality. But the feeling is not. He does not feel like a man entering the unknown. He feels like a man being redistributed. As the outer gate slams shut behind him, Miguel looks back through the narrow rear window of the bus at the low, beige sprawl of San Quentin against the bay. From the outside, it still looks almost peaceful. He understands now how deceptive that view really is. The bus pulls away. For the first time since arriving in chains, Miguel watches the prison recede. But it doesn't leave him. It never will. Months later, at his new facility, hundreds of miles from the bay, Miguel receives a final letter forwarded through the system. It's from his sister again. She writes. Mom asks if you're safer now. Miguel stares at the word. Safer. He does not know how to answer. Because safety inside a system built on containment is not the absence of danger. It is the redistribution of it. And somewhere on the shoreline of Northern California, gulls still circle above concrete walls that will never stop absorbing lives one day at a time. Miguel's first 24 hours inside San Quentin did not end when the sun rose or the riot died down or the investigation closed. They ended only when he understood the true cost of surviving that place. Not fear. Not injury. But the permanent rewiring of how a person defines normal. And for everyone who goes through those gates, whether they leave in a bus, a stretcher, or a coroner's van, that cost is never refunded. Not by time. Not by law. Not even by freedom. San Quentin still stands. That fact alone is unsettling. Year after year, wave after wave of inmates pass through its gates. Some leave. Some don't. Some survive by adapting. Others disappear into reports, statistics, and forgotten case numbers. The walls remain. The bay still glitters just beyond the razor wire. The towers still scan the yard with quiet patience. And somewhere within those concrete bones, the echoes of every scream, every riot, every whispered deal, and every final breath are still trapped in the air. Prisons are often described as places where time stops. But the truth is more disturbing. Time doesn't stop inside San Quentin. It gets refined. Stripped down. Reduced to survival units. Meals. Counts. Movements. lockdowns. Hope becomes transactional. Silence becomes protection. Violence becomes communication. And for the men inside, especially those who arrive young, time is no longer something they spend. It's something that spends them. Miguel's story represents thousands of real men who've entered San Quentin not knowing what version of themselves would come out the other side, if they ever did. His first 24 hours weren't about learning prison rules. They were about learning human limits. How quickly morality compresses under pressure. How fast fear edits personality. How survival forces compromises that follow you long after the gates reopen. San Quentin is not uniquely evil. That's the hardest part to accept. It is simply one of the oldest, most visible expressions of a system that has always struggled to balance punishment, safety, justice, and redemption. A system built on containment, managed by policy, and fueled by cycles that start long before the first crime is ever committed. The prison doesn't create violence from nothing. It concentrates it. It collects broken histories, untreated trauma, generational damage, and unresolved rage, and then seals it all inside a structure that was never designed for healing. And when violence erupts, society looks at the explosion. But rarely at the pressure that built silently for decades. Every public riot at San Quentin makes headlines. But the quiet damage never does. The man who dies in a shower stall at 2 a.m. The inmate who bleeds out too slowly for an ambulance. The young first-timer who hardens himself in a week because softness becomes fatal. The guards who carry the weight of watching it all unfold, shift after shift, year after year. San Quentin is often described as a monster. But monsters don't run on schedules. Systems do. And systems don't feel guilt. They only measure output. For every person who leaves San Quentin physically alive, something almost always stays behind inside. The version of normal they once knew. The assumptions they once had about fairness, mercy, or even time itself. The real sentence doesn't always end at release. It echoes. In crowded rooms. In sudden anger. In nightmares with steel doors that still won't open. In the reflex to scan every exit. In the instinct to sit with your back to the wall. Freedom doesn't always reset damage. Sometimes, it just relocates it. And that may be the most uncomfortable truth of all. We like to believe prisons are separate from us. Out of sight. Out of mind. Far from everyday life. But the people who enter them come from neighborhoods, schools, families, and streets that look exactly like ours. They don't arrive as statistics. They arrive as sons, daughters, brothers, fathers, teenagers,